Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Veritas, a podcast made by the church for the church. I'm Ryan Hennigan.
And I'm Michael Bashaw. At Veritas Community Church, we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is at work in and through us, transforming all things.
On Voices of Veritas, you will hear real stories of gospel transformation, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations that seek to encourage us as we follow Jesus.
We invite you to join us twice a month to listen, learn, and grow in faith together.
Hello and welcome to the Voices of Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hennigan, and tonight I'm sad to say that I am actually recording on my own. My co-host Michael is a little under the weather, so hope he gets better soon. But I'm very excited because our topic today is missions. And some of the people who've been listening to the podcast for a while, they might be aware one of the things we like to do here on the podcast is not only highlight specific life of Veritas as the church, but also specific ministries that Veritas partners with and how that support specifically works. A big part of that is highlighting missionaries as well as missions themselves, and those missionaries particularly who are part of the Veritas family. And so joining me today as guests, we have Philip, who goes by Phil, and Elizabeth Bennetch. Hi guys, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Well, you guys are training to become missionaries to France. Is that correct? I don't know if training is the right word, but preparing, getting ready to become missionaries to France. Can't wait to jump into your guys' story. But before we do that, for people who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Phil, we'll start with you.
So I was born in Brussels, Belgium, grew up on the mission field. My parents were church planting missionaries in Brussels, and then in Rome. But I spent some time in Germany before coming to college, where I met Liz. And so I've been going to Veritas for 12 years, and I'm a city planner. That's what I studied. So I work for the city of Columbus.
Awesome. Elizabeth, how about you?
Yeah, I'm from the far off land of Akron, Ohio. So I'm an Ohioan, born and raised. Yeah, grew up there, came to Ohio State in 2010, started at Veritas in 2014, Veritas Short North. I will clarify that. Yeah, and my day-to-day looks like taking care of our two little boys. I'm a stay-at-home mom, so we have a 6-year-old and an almost 4-year-old who keep me pretty busy.
What did you study in college? What do you, what was your major?
My background.
Yeah.
I graduated with a degree in linguistics.
Okay.
And studied psychology too. So that plays into our story. I thought I would be doing Bible translation when I graduated college. And yeah, after I graduated, eventually went on to work with special needs students. So I worked with really little ones at a school, and then worked in ministry for a few years here at Veritas before we had our first. So.
Nice. Is there a specific language that you studied?
I didn't. No, I say linguistics and people think I'm like really good at learning a bunch of languages, but no, it was more the science of language. I took Spanish for a long time. My family speaks Spanish, so I have that background. But otherwise, it's just trying to pick up French now.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. I mean, both of your guys' background seems like you were kind of made for missions. I mean, so with all your experience with your family and church planning, I mean, Brussels and Rome, and then Liz, I mean, you kind of have like a passion for understanding how language works and using that to maybe break down some barriers. Seems like it could be really, really influential. So cool. How did you guys discern that you wanted to become missionaries?
It was definitely later on. There wasn't that pressure in my family to do the similar thing that my parents did as traditional full-time missionaries. I mean, the cross-cultural background that I have, the really diverse church in Brussels and just rubbing shoulders with a lot of minority cultures in Brussels definitely shaped me, where I feel more at home among people that don't fit in more than trying to fit in myself. So that's a big part of how God called me. Definitely wasn't obvious. And so I studied city planning, and I was thinking, international development sounds really interesting. I could use my French in West Africa, do some development work. Lots of things happened there. Ended up at Veritas, meeting Liz, 12 years of being in community, and God really using that time to see what community looks like truly on a deeper level. And then the missions program that Veritas had, it was like a missions development program, but it wasn't just for overseas missions. It was designed to be for local cross-cultural evangelism too. So we got involved in that, and that was definitely part of how God called me and started nudging me to think about, hey, how have I equipped you? Really think about that and be open, because at that point I still wasn't thinking overseas missions,
So what was that program like? Because I'm not very familiar with it. Yeah. So you said Veritas had a program for missionary training?
Yeah, it may have been called School of Mission or something. We used to have a missions director or missions coordinator full-time. He wasn't a pastor, but he was thinking full-time about developing missions at Veritas. And so it was this multi-year program with maybe 15 or so people that had gone through it. It was very, robust. There was a lot of theological foundation, studying, reading, memorization. There was a strong community element to it, where there was the rhythm of meeting in community and holding each other accountable. And then there was practical evangelism and going out and saying, hey, I'm committing to going twice a week. So it was very robust. We learned a lot from that. It didn't, I don't know. We don't practice everything that we learned in that. It was a particular approach to cross-cultural evangelism.
Yeah. I think some of the biggest takeaways from it were just really bringing people who attend Veritas that have a heart for cross-cultural ministry, giving them some, biblical training, but then also recognizing that we live in a really diverse city. And if we, especially for people who maybe were considering moving to another country, saying, hey, let's look at our backyard. There's these pockets of different communities all over our city. Let's go meet them. And, really practical things we learned were just how to start relationships, how to maintain them when religion is different, when culture is really different. So that was a really, really formative for us.
And practicing being on a team too was very helpful, because teams are a huge dynamic in missions.
Yeah, that group was really informative in teaching different ways of doing it. I think for so long, there's been just kind of like one idea of what a missionary is or what they do, and we'll call that the traditional missionary, and there's certainly a need for that work. But there's also so many other ways of rubbing shoulders with the nations, and I think for the first time I considered a different approach. And as it turns out, that's where kind of how the Lord is calling us now to go kind of a different way, like Phil said. But yeah, for me, it goes back all the way to, I remember being really small. I had to be maybe 4, 5, 6 years old. I grew up in a small church that had adult prayer meetings on Wednesdays, but then they had this program for kids, and it was called M&M Club, which is just a very cute name, but it stood for Music and Missions. And so the teacher would have all these little like 5 and 6-year-olds. We would play, of course. We would learn how to pray, and we'd eat M&Ms, sing music, but then we'd always have a story about missionaries. So I heard really young about some of the big names of traditional missionaries that a lot of us know, the Elliots, Amy Carmichael. And as a little girl, just hearing these stories of people leaving their home and seeing people as valuable, even though they were different and they were hard to get to and they were hard to build relationships with. And then we'd spend time praying for the missionaries that our church supported. And for me, that was when I first really was drawn to this idea. I will say I was very, very scared that God would call me the way that he called these people. I remember being a little girl thinking, I could never do that. Absolutely not. And that fear really marked me from a lot of my childhood, just kind of being afraid, and especially being afraid that God would call me to something hard. And I think in some ways I obsessed over it or just thought about it an awful lot. And it wasn't until college, I got involved with a campus ministry at Ohio State. There was an older upperclassman who was kind of mentoring me, and she pointed out, she said, I've mentored quite a few students, and it's really not normal that people think about this as much as you do. And she said that, and it kind of struck me. I said, what do you mean people aren't? She said, I think there might be something there. Consider that, your fear or just your kind of the amount that you're thinking about this, that might be the Lord kind of nudging you. About the same time, I was also, like Phil said, learning what true community looked like for the first time. Not for the first time, but as an adult, when I had, there's hard things that I had been through, hard things other people had been through, and I saw myself becoming a lot more sensitive to that and being drawn to harder things. I really loved showing up for people who were going through something, and the Lord really just instilling more compassion in me, and kind of working through some of those fears that I had. Senior year, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to get my passport and I'm going to see what I'm so afraid of. Like, this nudge is only getting stronger. It's not going away. And so I ended up I got an internship with a Bible translation company and spent the summer in India, which was about as far away from Columbus as you can go. I think it's 12 or 13 hours time difference on the other side of the world. And God did a big number with that trip, just kind of my first really international experience, getting to see all sides of Bible translation, all sides of ministry, and how it wasn't just technical. It was people of all professions were needed in this work. Hospitality was needed. Literacy specialists were needed. Also, teachers, all of these jobs that I was really kind of blown. My mind was kind of blown to say, oh, this is so much more, and so many other skills are needed.
We've kind of already touched on this, obviously, but you guys are preparing to be missionaries to France. Maybe this is just me personally, but when I think about missionaries or foreign missions in general, I think about impoverished countries or closed countries, right? And I think that's probably pretty common. I think a lot of people think that. I mean, like you said, India is as far away from Columbus as you can probably get. I mean, there's pockets of it that are doing well, pockets of it that are not, but still kind of like, this is not a Western country like France. This is not a more rich history of Christianity type of country. So can you guys tell us why you decided on France as kind of the basis for your missionary work?
As we got married, we were thinking about, doing some kind of overseas work since we met and got married. But it wasn't clear what part of the world. I had some interest, in West Africa, as I said, with the French. Liz had, seen the need in South Asia, huge, numbers of unreached people groups. And that's, that's one framework that we were educated on in the missions world. It's a big theme around unreached and unengaged people groups, and you can be hyper focused on seeing the need through that lens, right, in the 1040 window. But so we had different ideas of where we could go, and as we thought and prayed about where the fact that I have a European citizenship, a Belgian passport, does allow me to live and work anywhere in the EU. So we thought, okay, let's not take that for granted. Mm-hmm. And Liz can speak to her journey and thinking not about the bush, but about these first world countries. And so we started looking at French speaking countries in Europe, and there's only a couple, And so eventually we met. We were down the line in the process with Crossworld, and we had met a family, older kids, a little bit ahead of us in stage of life. They had already been missionaries in France and Morocco, and we met them at orientation for Crossworld, and they told us about some ministry happening in Strasbourg, France, and they kind of invited us to check it out. And
just real quick,
yeah.
For background, Crossworld is like the organization you guys are a part of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In there somewhere, we engaged with Crossworld, 8 years ago. So it's been a long process.
Gotcha. Okay. And you said Strasbourg, France?
Yeah.
Okay. Is Strasbourg like one of those kind of international cities? I mean, obviously, it to me, it's not as like well known as like Paris or London, but is it pretty cross-cultural as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a smaller city,
A little smaller
Paris
than Columbus.
is massive. It's 9 million, and Columbus is 900,000.
City planner.
Strasbourg is about 200,000. So it's a smaller city. It's still very dense, but any city, even suburbs in Western Europe have been taking in refugees and immigrants for decades. Sure. And they're everywhere. And even smaller towns are going to have huge densities of immigrants and refugees.
Almost 70 cultures are represented in Strasbourg. And so the ministry that the team are going to be joining really focuses on that. They have, they're set up to really work with refugees especially, but that international population that is really just flooding the city.
Yeah. Wow.
It's also a quite strategic city as like a European hub. It's one of the European capitals for government. And it's this, next to Paris, it's the biggest university city in France, even though it's a smaller city. So there's some really interesting dynamics of the population, the demographics.
Wow, that's interesting. So what's the type of work specifically you guys will be doing? Are you going as marketplace missionaries, or is this a full-time missionary work, or what's this look like for you guys?
Yeah. So the plan is that Phil will get a job in the marketplace as a city planner, and will work full-time. That will, he'll be able to make connections at work that will hopefully be really, really impactful. But yeah, so he'll be working full-time, and then we're joining a team that's part of a church that runs a community center. So front-facing It is really, really close to a big train station where the nations are coming in and out of every day. But it's walking distance from that terminal, or from that station. And front facing, it's a coffee shop. And so really like a third place there. And then in the back, they have a room where they offer French language classes and what else? A lot of other things. It kind of depends what giftings, what skills
Programs
are
for
present on the
moms.
team. Mm-hmm.
And this is all run by the church there. So
Yeah, it's out of the church.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of overlap with leadership in that. So the idea is that we would, get involved there.
Yeah, there's definitely a huge need for, being in different neighborhoods. I think, was it 8 out of the 14 neighborhoods were Muslim majority in Strasbourg? It just gives you an idea. And there's just a huge need for all kinds of believers to be a Christian, for others, that have never met a Christian before to actually know one. That opportunity doesn't come like it does here in the States in terms of how many French people know a Christian. You look at the French culture as a whole, and you look at these minority cultures that are actually looking for, something different. The French culture is unreached, actually. I mean, you can think about the history of France and how central it was in the Reformation, but ultimately it is now unreached. It's the long-term commitment in Western Europe to commit to doing disciple making there. It's not quick work. We had a conversation with a leader of a kind of a church planting network in Brussels. We were looking at Brussels and Paris and Strasbourg on our vision trip, and we met with one of the leaders there, and he was telling us, like, if you want to get numbers and converts and see success in that way, there's a lot of other places than coming to Western Europe, because this is going to take a long time to develop relationships. But I feel like how God is, had us at Veritas for this long to actually experience, by God's grace, like true community, the rhythms that we talk about, to be able to experience that at Veritas, and then to bring what we've learned about life on life to people that don't know a Christian.
You mentioned this is longer term commitment. So how long will you guys be there? Do you have like an end date, or is this like we're moving?
We would love to raise our family there. Our boys are pretty young. We don't have a time limit on ourselves. On our vision trip, we got to ask a lot of questions to the teams we visited, and an important one for us was, who's casting the vision here? Is it the Americans? Is it the locals? If you're on a team and maybe it's effective and it looks good, but it's not being driven by the people who know the culture, maybe it won't last. Maybe
Absolutely.
It won't stick. And so, yeah, like Phil said, just being humble, like moving. We hope that with our move, we can be learners for probably longer than we think we need to be. Observing, we've led community groups through Veritas or in college, and that doesn't mean we're going to get there and start leading. We might check ourselves, because I think Americans have a tendency to come in and just kind of be the loudest voice in the room, and we don't want to do that. We want to be humble in our approach to say we're new to this. We're new, not only as new missionaries, if you will, but we're also new to this culture. Like Phil has a lot more European in him. in his culture than I do, but as a family, we're new to this.
Mm-hmm.
So what don't we know?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we heard about this ministry geared around mercy and justice for refugees, the church was gravitating around that as a way to serve. That made so much sense. And then to visit the city, to talk with the teams, is super helpful to actually confirm, have the Lord, confirm with your affections, and peace, and to hear about, hey, how does this team function? That's super critical too.
Yeah. And we kind of alluded to the journey and just the time and the waiting. But it was about 8 years, because we started talking about this when we were engaged, and about 8 years of just saying, Lord, what are you doing? This isn't going like we thought. We, in some ways, when we first got married, we're ready to go then. But in visiting, seeing this ministry and learning more about it, as we came home and we were reflecting on it, we said, wow, so many of the needs that, this team has, it was almost like a one-to-one with the experiences that we have gained in the waiting. And so if we would have visited 5 years before, that wouldn't have been there. We wouldn't have the training or the experience, or even down to little things like they run a coffee shop, and that was my job in college. Like God cares so much about those details, and when you can just zoom out and you can see these things lining up, that you say, oh, maybe that's why it took a lot longer than I wanted,
right?
Because God was doing something,
mm-hmm.
and it can feel so frustrating when you don't have that mile high view. But that, again, for us was another just really sweet confirmation.
Trusting in his timing can definitely be difficult, but it always pays off for sure. So you've kind of touched on this a little bit about how this is kind of a different type of missionary work, where your marketplace can feel you're going to be getting a job, hopefully city planning and city.
Lord willing.
That's right. What is it, like a dream of yours to be a city planner in a European city?
No, I mean, from a career standpoint, it's a huge, it feels like taking a step backwards. Yeah. I love my job. I'm working on a really, good project and, role for my skill sets. And do I want to be in Europe, culturally, personality wise? Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why I'd want to be in Europe. My job specifically is not one of them. I have a lot of questions about how my skill sets are going to fit in to the system.
Yeah.
But, and I have the type of personality that will try to figure it out, and go through all the hoops to make sure this is going to work, and I can't. And God has given us a lot of faith to say, this is a big decision. Who knows where your career is going to be?
Mm-hmm. So with the longer term aspect of this missionary work and being marketplace missionaries, what does success look like?
Yeah, I mean, we feel called to this new mission field until he calls us somewhere else. And in terms of, success in obedience to that call, we want to stay through the high and the low. And, you need to remember that calling in order to go through tough things, just like marriage. But, faithfulness, not just in the work, like I am being faithful in doing all these things. This is the ministry, not just the work itself, but faithfulness to him, and humbling ourselves at every step of the way. And obedience to the many calls that he's called us to.
What are some of the struggles or challenges you anticipate running into?
And I think there should be challenges.
Yeah.
And I think that's one indicator of success in following the Lord is, am I too comfortable? Or am I doing something hard? What are hard things that God has called me to do right now? And this move is definitely a hard thing. And I think that can be a good indicator for success.
A big one for me will be just language acquisition. So the hope is that I'll enroll in full-time language school for at least a year or two. And so just that classic struggle of, especially if Phil is working full-time, being the parent that's, learning how to interact with teachers at school or just get around, do grocery shopping. That will be a big challenge for probably a long time.
The way that we will be adjusting will be different because of me sort of going back home, to European culture, and us managing that process in our marriage. Probably me slowing down more in terms of like adding things to our life and letting, being in step with Elizabeth.
And then, just the nature of refugee work has particular challenges there. A lot of these beloveds are, arriving in Strasbourg with really significant trauma. And just the dynamic of entering into that with them. And on top of that, probably having not just a language barrier with French, but they'll be speaking a third language. And so finding like common ground to connect. I do look forward to kind of being a student with them. I think that will be a good bridge, saying, I don't know this language either, but working on that together.
So you've mentioned a couple times you have two sons, and you're preparing not only yourselves to move to France and be missionaries, but also I assume them. I mean, you said 6 and 4, correct?
6 and 4.
So what's it been like have you guys been trying to prepare them in any way, or is there a way to prepare them for culture shock at that age? I'm not sure if that's a thing, but I would assume it would be.
I think about this a lot, just being home with them. And, I think it certainly helps in our case that there's some context that we can point to of, pictures of Phil at their age in Belgium. And we can point to, they know that their family has lived in different countries, and just normalizing it, normalizing talking, we talk about missionaries, we talk about getting in airplanes and visiting other countries. And especially at this stage where we're close, but still far enough away from an actual move, we're just kind of talking about it neutrally, and bringing it up when it makes sense, sometimes being more intentional with it, finding common threads with life here and there, which we do a lot of getting books from the library or showing them pictures of our vision trip, and they're really excited to get around the city in trams and riding on trains and things like that, which they're little boys. So, of course.
We look at maps and we can point to different countries, and so they're familiar with the idea. We've asked questions in the past couple of years of, what if we moved, to another country? And that's kind of how we started planting that seed. And in the past year, it's been more like, when we moved to France, and Arthur's always like, wait, what? Even though we've told him like multiple times, we're not shy about it.
We also have friends that are from different countries here and speak other languages, which is fun for them. Say like, let's learn a new word so we can say hi to this person.
So how does Veritas specifically partner with you guys in preparing to go to France?
Especially back when we were discerning where or what type of work we even might do, saying like, where does Veritas feel called? Like, are there, working in tandem with with our church home, because we don't just want to say, hey, we're going to go, can you help us get there? But to really see ourselves as an extension of Veritas, going somewhere. Like, we definitely want to do that in collaboration with our church family. Praying for us big time. Discipling us through all the steps. So, meeting with Joe and Chris and Paris before we left, and then when we got back, meeting back up with Joe and sharing with him how it went. We have felt very cared for in that way. Veritas has been really generous in helping us do a lot of these trainings or trips that we've taken over the years, supporting us as we move forward.
Yeah, Veritas is supporting us financially, and the missionary care team is going to be really helpful for all the missionaries if people haven't looked into that and how it works, and with advocates and stuff.
The Short North congregation over the past few years, I want to say 2 or 3, has really been looking at how to care well for the missionaries that we have sent. We have, I don't know how many overseas now, at least 6 or 7 units from the Short North. And so looking at how do we, as living in Columbus, how do we still have bridge this connection with our overseas workers? And out of that came this really beautiful missionary care team, where each unit has someone at the Veritas Short North body who knows them and is checking in with them and is helping, coming back on furlough. You need a vehicle. You need a place to live. You need baby gear. All of that, really seeing Veritas shoulder those practical needs, and also keeping the body up to date on how they can be prayed for.
Mm-hmm.
So when are you guys planning on going to France?
We are shooting for summer of 2026.
Okay.
Which I guess it's 2026 now. Yeah. So this summer.
Coming up. Well, I just want to thank you both so much for your time. And it seems like it's been, about 8 years or more in the process of God really just working on your hearts for his people. And you guys are being obedient to him, and you're following him, and even with scary or fearful things. And just really, it's encouraging to me to see people like you guys out there who are really putting feet to their faith. So just want to, again, thank you for your faithfulness and your time. But I think that'll do it for us today on the Voices of Veritas podcast. Thank you, everybody, and tune in next time.
Thanks, Ryan.